Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining us today. I'm Chelsea Dooley. I'm one of the care advisors with Neuro Challenge Foundation for Parkinson's. We are a nonprofit organization providing services including education, support, care advising, all for free of charge to our community. We are very excited here today to have Jennifer Blackstone with us. Jennifer is one of our valued community members. She was diagnosed with Parkinson's in 2011 and as of 2020 has become a volunteer and co-leader of Compassion and Choices Action Team for Sarasota. We are pleased to have her here today for her presentation on exploring end-of-life options. Thank you, Jennifer, and welcome.
Thank you, Chelsea, for giving me the opportunity to be here and address the many people helped by Neuro Challenge Foundation. I'm honored to speak to you all. In the short time I've lived in Sarasota, which is just 3 years, I've discovered 2 wonderful and well-run nonprofit organizations that are adding greatly to my life. The first is our host today, Neuro Challenge Foundation for Parkinson's. I'm a person with Parkinson's. I was diagnosed 9 years ago at age 54. And I am so glad to have chosen Sarasota to retire, for I've learned already how valuable their services are and caring staff to the PD community. My retirement also gave me time to get involved with the other organization called Compassion and Choices. It's the nation's largest and most active nonprofit in the area of end-of-life care and options. For more than 30 years, Compassion and Choices has been a leader in advocating for patients' rights and providing educational tools to empower people to chart their end-of-life journeys. Their tools help us envision what we want and partake in the critical conversations with loved ones and healthcare providers so that our wishes and priorities are respected. We all may take advantage of Compassion and Choices website, which includes tools and examples of ways in which we may all aspire to an end-of-life experience we want. One of the latest tools is the book Finish Strong, Putting Your Priorities First at Life's End. It was written by Barbara Coombs Lee, who is now President Emerita and Senior Advisor for Compassion and Choices. Her career spanned more than 50 years, starting in healthcare as a nurse and physician's assistant. She attended many patients who suffered through prolonged and uncomfortable deaths. Later, she earned a law degree and worked on issues involving patients' rights. In 1994, she was a co-author of Oregon's Death with Dignity Act. This next slide is, I call my title page. Today, I will address the first topic called Exploring End-of-Life Options. And then I'm betting you all will be so intrigued with the subject of death and dying that you will flock to our next program to create your own advance directives, your plan to finish strong. I'm here today for several reasons. First, because of the insight and courage of Neuro Challenge Foundation. Talking about death and dying is not a popular topic, and booking this topic is evidence of how passionate they are about the Parkinson's community being informed. Attention, caregivers and families and friends, even healthcare workers. This talk is not just for people with Parkinson's. I'm going to die, and so are you. Second, I'm here today to encourage you to think about and document what you want to see happen at end of life. If you don't have a plan, someone else's ideas will be pointed to you. If you have a plan, you have a chance for wishes and values to be considered at end of life. And third, I became a strong supporter of Compassion and Choices after a personal journey I experienced when my mom died. My mom died in 2006 after a 2-year struggle with cancer. It was not a gentle death, and I wish that her final days had been more comfortable and peaceful. I felt like I let her down. It took me a while to process, and finding Compassion and Choices helped. Since then, I feel compelled to share what I've learned so that others might do better with their loved ones. Dr. Atul Gawande is a surgeon and public health researcher. He's best known for his book, Being Mortal. He says, life is meaningful because it is a story, and in stories, endings matter. So I want to take you back a bit, about 100 years, for a little bit of history on end-of-life issues in America. Most older adults, which are we, the baby boomers, have witnessed the rise of modern medicine. It has been an explosion of technology and knowledge that really took hold in the middle of the 1900s. Prior to that, before there were antibiotics and imaging, operations and immunizations, end of life was more of a natural process. People often died at home, and families lived together or were close to each other. The family doctor might have been present at your home. Now, the end of life process is different, as this slide shows. Our life expectancy is longer, but so too has grown longer the process of dying. Specialized medicine has replaced the family doctor. End-of-life care is high-tech and complicated. It has become a medical process and no longer a natural process. We baby boomers have experience in making changes in areas that are important to us. Witness the natural childbirth movement 30 or 40 years ago, where parents demanded more control and participation, especially with respect to the use of drugs. The childbirth process was forever changed. We have families and fathers in the delivery rooms that are made comfortable to look like your home. Fewer or no drugs are administered and not unless requested. There are midwives and births at home. We baby boomers are now older, and it seems like we have ideas on what we want in this final stage of our lives as well. Current research suggests a growing dissatisfaction among older adults with the way in which people die in America. 75% of people say they would prefer to die at home and not hooked up to machines in a hospital. Yet only 25% of deaths happen this way. More of us want to say in shaping our end-of-life experience, yet this is happening only slowly at best. 92% of Americans say that talking about end-of-life care is important, but only 25% do so. Americans might not be talking yet about death and dying, but it is drawing more and more attention. There are articles, books, talks, webinars devoted to care at one's end of life. An example, I came across an interesting TED Talk by Michael Hebb. This was in 2013, he talked. He's described as an author, speaker, and provocateur. I'd like to be a provocateur. He has written a book and started a movement called Let's Talk About Death Over Dinner. He offers great ideas for dinners with a stated topic and believes that breaking bread together, perhaps with a little wine, is one of the most effective ways to promote social change. It's estimated that over 200,000 dinners have taken place since 2013. Excuse me, we in Sarasota are looking to host such dinners when COVID clears up. Hebb says, how we want to die is the most important and costly conversation America isn't having. Over the last 30 to 40 years, modern medicine has continued to offer an ever-increasing supply of tests, treatments, medications, machines, all designed to help keep people alive, which it's doing well. Doctors have many tools at their disposal to analyze and diagnose with specificity. The general rule in medicine is that if you don't say otherwise, you should expect that the doctors will do everything for everybody every time. It is working well in that our life expectancy has grown. In many cases, however, the quality of that extended life may be diminished due to harm caused by invasive tests or futile surgeries and toxic medications. Compassion and Choices calls this the overtreatment conveyor belt. Every medical intervention carries a risk of injury and side effects. Those risks can rob us of the mental and physical well-being in our final months. It's estimated that up to 30% of medical treatment is not necessary. There are many other reasons overtreatment occurs, and I'll describe a few of the major ones to you. Once you understand the tendency, you can find ways in which to protect your loved ones from overtreatment. Doctors are as reluctant as the rest of us to deliver bad news. Their goal is to keep you alive, and telling you there are no more options may feel very much like a personal failure. This may lead doctors to offer other tests or treatments, even if there's only a slim chance of extending life, even if the side effects can cause suffering. Patients and families themselves contribute to overtreatment. Families and loved ones want the patient to live. Both parties often don't recognize or deny that the end is near. Everyone looks to the doctor for what to do next. Often, a suggested treatment goes forward. And a word of caution about words. When a doctor offers another treatment idea, patients and loved ones often hear the word cure rather than treatment. Having something, anything to hold on to, activates hope, perhaps that miracle cure is there, when in reality, it may be a last-ditch effort to extend life for a few more days. Listening carefully and asking questions is important. Family dynamics can be very difficult to navigate and can also lead to overtreatment. I have a story from my friend Pamela. She shared about her father's struggle. Pamela's dad was diagnosed with end-stage pancreatic cancer, and he also suffered from Crohn's disease. The surgeon determined that his cancer was inoperable, but offered to refer him to an oncologist. Her dad then chose to start a chemo treatment that made him horribly sick, and he was back in the hospital within a week. Pamela had a hard time watching her dad suffer from the chemo treatments. Her mother and adult brother, both of whom lived with her dad and had some mental illness issues, were very reliant on him. And her dad was worried about them after he died. He didn't want to leave them alone. Hospice came and presented services and comfort care, which Pamela would have loved to see her father choose, but it was never in the cards. The rest of her family wanted all measures taken to extend his life. And her father, Pamela thinks he went along with this. He's the provider, and I think felt duty-bound to try to survive. New technology is another reason for overtreatment. Technology is seductive, and merely putting technology in place creates demand for it. There's a natural inclination for doctors and hospitals to want to use it. So, okay, let's try that test and see what we learn. When the real cost of the test to the patient, however, may be discomfort or pain. And was there really a chance that the new technology could change the prognosis? Sometimes yes, sometimes no. One of the bigger reasons for overtreatment arises from the financial structure of our healthcare system and methods of delivering healthcare. Hospitals and doctors are rewarded for overtreatment, usually often under fee-for-service methods that are widely used in the US, and for-profit institutions also. Using all means of testing, procedures, and treatments happens often. In addition, many doctors have affiliations with drug companies and medical care device companies, which promote products and is actually a conflict of interest. So those are some of the major contributors that give rise to overtreatment. Staying off the overtreatment conveyor belt is key if you envision a gentle death. In the absence of guidance from you or your surrogate, it is likely that everything will be done to keep you alive. So the statistics I mentioned earlier don't make sense. We say it's important to talk about end of life, but we're not really. We want to die at home, but it's not happening. So what gives? Well, there are a couple hurdles that we must clear, or you can call them barriers, that hold us back. We need to acknowledge and address these issues in order to find the frame of mind that we need to address our own end-of-life journey. The first is facing our mortality. Have you faced your mortality? I think you just missed them. I feel that I have. However, I don't like the awkward phrase, facing your mortality. I find it simpler to describe the process I went through. I've always known intellectually that I was going to die. And then along came Parkinson's symptoms, and 3 years later, a diagnosis. And both suddenly and subtly, the inescapable truth settled within me. There was an endpoint out there that I had never felt before. And my mortality has resided within me ever since. I would not say it's a bad thing. It gave me permission to look at what I really wanted to be doing. It's made me question and doubt those big questions like, why am I here? And did I contribute in any way? So when faced with our mortality, I think it changes the way we see life. One might even become more motivated to talk about end-of-life care. I have a bucket list too, and I've managed to find a few adventures in the last few years. Since March of this year, there has also been the coronavirus, ever present and growing. And I imagine many people who have been affected have faced their mortality and are seeing their world differently. Having the conversation is the second hurdle. Just talking in general about end of life. People have trouble doing it. What we must conquer is talking about end of life. It's referred to as the conversation in circles, in compassion and choices circles. The idea is to talk early and often with those closest to you, families, loved ones, care providers, about what's important and what you envision for yourself. If you don't, no one will know what you want, and it may result in family conflicts. These conversations do not come naturally for most. When you give talking a try, you probably will get pushback. Honey, you're doing great. We don't need to talk about this now. Or Dad, quit being so morbid. The conversation does become easier with practice and perseverance. Studies indicate that the single most powerful thing a person can do to improve their chances of a good death is to talk about it. These two topics, accepting our mortality and talking about it, will put you in a better position to envision what you want as your end of life approaches. There are tough decisions in later stages of an illness like Parkinson's. And speaking with your doctor candidly is a good thing to do. In any and all instances, you, the patient, or your surrogate, if you are unable to speak for yourself, have the right to decide what to do or not to do. It's helpful to imagine a scale, like the scales of justice in this picture. You can weigh the benefits and burdens of different treatments. Weighing properly, though, requires information. Ask lots of questions. Ask again if you don't understand. Ask the doctor to speak candidly about what's really happening. There are lists of typical questions that you may Google or consult Compassionate Choices. There's even a TED Talk called The 4 Questions to Always Ask Your Doctor. Something to be aware of, in 2016, Medicare and Medicaid issued a ruling that allows physicians to be reimbursed for advanced care planning conversations, they call it. You may schedule half-hour sessions for free to talk with your doctor and share your thoughts and advanced care directives with your doctor. So counseling may take place during your annual wellness visit or during a routine office visit. And it appears, the way I read it, that you may also have more than one of these talks per year, and you can do them with each doctor, different doctors. So Compassionate Choices has a guide to planning for this meeting. It's a tool that produces a letter for discussion based on input you submit. For me, communications with doctors was a tough issue when my mom was dying of cancer in 2006. A little background. My parents retired in North Carolina. I lived in Pittsburgh. My brother and sister, who are younger, were even further away. I knew no one that had lost parents at this point. Now, here, among my friends in Sarasota, there's talk and support and sharing of information about end of life for parents. Both my parents were gone by the time I was 49. My dad died in 2005, about a year prior to my mom. He had prostate cancer, and thankfully, his final days were peaceful and at home with the support of hospice. Not so my mom. At Duke University Hospital, I had no idea which doctors were hers and who, if anyone, was in charge of her overall care. Part of this was my problem because I did not know I had the power, or what I wasn't empowered to ask. My mom had some complications after exploratory surgery, and there were several doctors from different specialties involved in the week following her surgery. It was crazy. If there were family meetings available at Duke in 2006, I didn't know about it and no one offered. I never met the surgeon who performed her surgery. I did not meet her clinical oncologist until a week after her surgery, when he came to deliver the diagnosis. It was breast cancer that she had had 18 years ago, returning, and it had metastasized throughout her lower pelvic area and all the organs there. It was stage 4, not good. But what left me speechless was this kindly older gentleman, the oncologist, patting her knee and saying, "I'll have you back on the golf course in 6 months." Anyway, in general, throughout my mom's ordeal, I felt like a deer in headlights. Everything seemed to be happening fast, and I was 2 or 3 steps behind. I also think because this was a huge teaching hospital, no one kept me informed and likely felt somebody else was keeping me informed. And as you might have guessed, my family had not had the conversation. All I knew was my mom had a DNR request and she did not want to be kept alive by artificial means. For me so far, I have begun talking with my neurologist and internist about being straightforward and being candid with each other. I'll admit it's not easy talks. I'm a bit shy, but I'm getting better at it. A little bit about hospice. I've heard stories and read articles about hospice care, and sadly, it seems that among both patients and doctors, accepting hospice care has become associated with giving up. You're going to hospice care? You quit fighting? Are you giving up? I've learned the average number of days that Americans spend in hospice care is about 3. And one source I read said on average, people with Parkinson's spend less than a day in hospice care. Hospice is a resource that we should become familiar with, because it could offer excellent comfort care sooner. Also, don't wait for your doctor to bring up hospice. You may need to be the one to inquire about it. Do not assume it is not available to you without first asking. My understanding here is you start by asking your doctor, neurologist, or PCP to tell you how it works. I think it's a good idea for all of us to investigate what services are available from hospice and how best to tap into these. Because it's hard to know when one is within 6 months of end of life, hospice may provide comfort care sooner than we realize. Also, people with Parkinson's may experience many non-motor symptoms that are not addressed well by the neurologist and drugs. If you are in pain often, a discussion with hospice is warranted. Exploring your options. The title of my talk today refers to exploring options. These options are not aimed at curing illness, but focus on comfort, dignity, and quality of life as we approach the end of life. The process of creating your advance directives reveals your wishes and values. Conversations with your family and loved ones and healthcare providers let these important people know what you want. Your plan defines what a good death is for you, and it is unique. A good death for someone else may be very different. There are individuals who pursue, you see the purple words here, individuals who pursue every treatment available to extend his or her life, regardless of discomfort or pain or side effects. There are those who decide to refuse or discontinue many, if not all, treatments, particularly if they reach a certain point where their situation and discomfort level becomes intolerable. For many who do not specify what they want or haven't talked about end-of-life wishes, which is about 2/3 of people do not have advance directives, these individuals often receive the most treatments. In this situation, and especially if a patient cannot speak for his or herself, it can be tough on families. If they can't agree on what to do, the situation can be traumatic. And for me, I would probably find a point at which I would refuse or discontinue treatments when I reach that threshold. I will have talked about that place with my son, Eric, who is my surrogate, in case I cannot communicate. So to summarize on this slide, your options are to pursue all measures or some measures, refuse treatment, or discontinue treatment you have already had. It is your choice or the choice of your surrogate if you are unable to speak for yourself. If you refuse or discontinue treatments, you are considered to be choosing comfort care only or letting nature take its course. Another term I hear is allow natural death, all in order to die as gently and peacefully as you can with medical support. After my mom was diagnosed with stage 4 cancer, she called me one morning. She was at the hospital having a routine procedure done. A cardiologist had visited her and suggested a procedure called an inferior vena cava filter placement to prevent pulmonary embolisms. I got on the phone with the cardiologist and I had just one question. This was an easy one. Would an embolism result in a quicker or less painful death than stage 4 breast cancer, now metastasized all over her pelvic area? It was a short conversation, and my mom chose not to do the cardiac procedure. For people with Parkinson's, there are a few decisions that will almost certainly arise. There may be options to do or take something that may extend your life, but you or your surrogate will consider at what cost. Will have to consider at what cost. What would my quality of life be if I continue with life-extending treatments? So here are some examples. Antibiotics are prescribed to treat infections, especially pneumonia. And reports show that close to 50% of people with Parkinson's die due to pneumonia. Often it has to do with trouble swallowing and aspirating food. The dilemma, do you take antibiotics to clear the infection? Yet the underlying problem of having trouble eating remains. Pneumonia is likely to happen again. Some will take antibiotics and some won't. It's your choice. Your Parkinson's meds. If you have chosen comfort care only and are refusing medications, it might not be wise to stop all PD meds. Palliative care people should know which meds to continue to keep you comfortable while awaiting natural death. These are our same 3 options, only applied to different topics below. Life support is something you should definitely consider ahead of time and have documented in your advance directives. You have the same options here to pursue or refuse or discontinue artificial life support. 3 main types of artificial support are cardiac support that keeps your heart beating artificially, breathing support like a ventilator that breathes for you, and nutrition and hydration support for those not eating or drinking enough. People with Parkinson's often face the problem of not getting enough nutrition and hydration near the end of life. Most Parkinson's patients, by the time the disease is advanced, have trouble swallowing and are at risk of aspirating food and liquids, and maybe on a liquid diet even. You will almost certainly be offered a feeding tube to put food and hydration directly into your body artificially. It's your choice. Be aware, if you do not have advance directives saying what you want or do not want, if you cannot speak for yourself and do not have a surrogate to speak for you, medications, treatments, life support may likely be ordered for you. Remember our supply about if the default in US medicine is do everything for everybody every time. An additional option available is the choice to voluntarily stop eating and drinking. It's called VSED. In advanced Parkinson's, the decision to voluntarily stop eating and drinking shortens the dying process, especially if eating has become difficult and there is no appetite. This can also be considered to give some control to the dying process if a person decides that they're done suffering or their suffering is intolerable. Working with hospice or a medical team is highly recommended in order to minimize discomfort. There is one last option available to some people in the US, but currently not to Floridians, and that is medical aid in dying. It is sometimes called death with dignity, after the names of some of the state laws. This is a practice in which a terminally ill adult has the option to ingest medication prescribed by a doctor to end suffering and die peacefully in their sleep. This option is currently authorized in the District of Columbia and nine states. On September 15th, Maine became the 9th state. medical aid in dying was available first in Oregon, and it started 23 years ago. There is now a lot of data available about how it's working. I certainly was surprised to learn that only 0.5%, 0.5% of people request medical aid in dying, and that a substantial number of those people go on to die naturally and do not use the resource that they have in hand. So this slide talks about how it is performing. So having a prescription for aid in dying medication, a large percent of that goes unused. So of the 0.5% of people who have the prescription medication, I think it's about between 30 and 40% do not end up using it. People use the law in general to minimize suffering and not to save money. And elderly people, people with disabilities, people of color have not been coerced or abused, as was a concern 23 years ago. Oh, there's our 5.5%. When you decide to create advance directives, and after discussions, you eventually arrive at decisions about about your options above. Knowing you have the right to choose is empowering in itself. Be aware that your advance directives are not set in stone. If at the 11th hour you decide that you want to change your mind and go for more chemo or try something else, that's your choice too. These decisions and discussions aren't easy, but there's a little bit of a silver lining. People have reported feeling much calmer and more in control, having gone through the planning process and making advance directives. That it is possible to fill your final days with life and not being consumed by fears and details of dying. For those of you listening who have Parkinson's, I want to share with you a recommendation about advance directives and your options. This came up during my research in both writing, things I found, and verbally. Start early. Not only is this an emotional topic, but one that requires some research potentially. Also, for some people, lots of discussion. The main reason, though, is as Parkinson's advances, up to 80% of people experience some form of dementia and have trouble communicating. You don't want to wait until that point. You want to decide your priorities and communicate with loved ones and families and healthcare providers well before you start having communication problems. Finally, you're documenting what you want to do in your advance directives. There is paperwork to be completed to document your wishes. Under the umbrella term of advance directives, there are two documents: a living will, which describes what you want or don't want, and the designation of a healthcare surrogate. In other words, the person who will speak for you if you are not able. I recommend designating your surrogate right away so that there is someone who knows what you want in case you are slower at finishing your directives. Compassion and Choices website has links to standard documents for each state. You do not need to have an attorney to complete these forms. Keep in mind, your advance directives will likely be updated several times during your lifetime as situations change. A gift you leave. You might not realize this, but your advance directives are a gift. I carry guilt and uncertainty about my mom's final months. I felt I had not advocated well for her. I want to do a better job for my sons when I die. Here's my point. Without direction, you're giving a gift to your family if you know what you want and you document it. Without direction, family members will be left to guess what you want, and this may easily lead to family arguments. Without direction, many people end up receiving aggressive, life-extending procedures and treatments. So tell your loved ones how you want to navigate a serious illness. Your advance directives and your prior conversations become their roadmap, and that roadmap is a gift you give them. And finally, I want to challenge all of you, not just people with Parkinson's, to create your advance directives, your plan to finish strong. As I said earlier, we are all terminal. So I also challenge caregivers, families, friends to do the same. If you would like a little inspiration and assistance, beginning in February of 2021, our Sarasota team of Compassionate Choices will begin offering a virtual class called the Advanced Directives Workshop. The free workshop will meet weekly via Zoom for 3 or 4 weeks, with the goal of participants to produce their advanced directives. Our basic text will be Compassionate Choices End-of-Life Decision Guide, which you see here. There will also be articles, talks, webinars that we feel are inspiring and contain good data. You can contact me, or there's contact information at the end of this talk to sign up or discuss it with people, with us. I end with words from the Conversation Project. This is a public engagement initiative whose goals are to have every person's wishes for end-of-life care expressed and respected. Too many people die in a manner they would not choose, and too many of their loved ones are left bereaved, guilty, and uncertain. It's time to transform our culture so we shift from not talking about dying to talking about it. It's time to share the way we want to live at the end of our lives. And it's time to communicate about the kind of care we want and don't want for ourselves. We believe that the place for this to begin is at the kitchen table, not in the ICU, with people we love before it's too late. Thank you. I've enjoyed talking to everyone. And here's our contact information if you'd like to be in touch. And I look forward to meeting you someday. Bye.